We're moving it a little bit, but we're good. Hi, everybody. Welcome in to session 4. And we're happy to see you. We're talking about sound healing today. We're doing a little behind the scenes stabilizing of our camera.
Sound okay?
Yeah, I think it still might be moving a little bit. It's a little crooked, but I think it's good. Can you guys see me okay? Everything's fine. I think we just kind of leave it for today, and that looked good.
Oh, here we go.
There we go.
There
It's
we
perfect.
go.
Yay! Okay. We're good. I'm good. You're good. It's good to see you guys. Okay, so we're talking about sound tools today, and I actually have what might be a surprising take on today's class content. Might be a little bit not what you were expecting. And I meant to grab the tool. I'm actually wondering if I have any right here in my office. I don't know that I do. But we're going to be talking about the Merkaba today. So if anybody behind the scenes, it's been such a busy day because our beloved Jared is out today, and so we've been doing a lot of things behind the scenes. If anybody behind the scenes has a Merkaba, if not, what I can do is really quickly grab my phone and just pull up an image of it, because I don't actually have to show it to you in person. I can show you a representation of a Merkaba. But believe it or not, what we're talking about today, I'm going to crouch down just a little bit so you can see me. What we're talking about today is the combination, the sort of the integration of light and spirit and body, what we call mind, body, spirit, in, sort of modern metaphysical context, and the origin of that. And by the way, this takes me back. So I was in Mexico for a couple of days at the end of last week. I took my kids and my sister to Mexico. And yeah, so we are live. There was no hurricane when I was there. In fact, there was a hurricane here while I was there. So I had much better weather than anybody in Southern California. Today's not the best day to be on the Yucatan Peninsula. I will say that. But when I was there, it was really beautiful. And I had an incredible conversation with a teacher in the middle of the jungle. And we actually talked about a lot of things. It was hours long conversation. But we talked about tonight's class. And so I wanted to tell you, we are talking about ZILS, which is your sound healing worksheet for 2023. I'm going to quickly grab my phone just in case, because I know my whole team is super busy right now. I'm going to grab my phone just so as I pull up some concepts I can show you on my phone real quick. So stay tuned. I normally have it with me, and just this time I didn't. But I really hope that you enjoyed yesterday's bonus class. If you were not able to attend, my really good friend, and she is one of my really good friends, Samantha, taught belly dance with us yesterday. And so if you missed it, you can go back and watch the recording. Karen can help you access that recording. I thought it was a really cool experience for you to learn some basic, what we call drills, right? And how to work with your hands. And so today, our conversation around the ZILS, which are hand symbols. And you can actually use them like tingsas, right? They're very much like tingsas, and they have a lineage that connects them to tingsas, which I think is really interesting. Tingsas came out of North Asia and the Tibetan and Nepalese culture, and the ZILS came out of Mesopotamia, Egypt, sort of the Middle Eastern tradition. And so you've got a set of what we call hand symbols, right? CYMBALS, that actually connects whether you have Asian lineage or Middle Eastern lineage. I have Middle Eastern lineage, as a lot of you know. My lineage takes me, I'm all the things, right? I'm North African / Egyptian and Greek and Italian, which is Roman. And then some of you have Asian lineage that takes you back to Nepal and Tibet and, North China and North India. And so you might have that lineage which connects you to the Tingshas. Yeah, and they called them castanets in the 60s and 70s. I'm going to teach you how to use them tonight, and I'm hoping that you will start to incorporate them into not just your belly dance practice. I mean, some of you may have fallen in love with belly dance, right? And you're going to keep doing it forever. When I learned about it 25 years ago, I fell in love, and I've been studying with different teachers my whole life. And actually, my two teachers, Jackie and Samantha, are friends, so they know each other. It's a very small world. And I love them because they have more of a traditional kind of Egyptian, the traditional Egyptian practice that we were talking about yesterday. But there's a whole lineage now that's more modern of the tribal fusion belly dance, which I love too. And that's even more powerful for your core. So if you're doing it for physical fitness, the tribal fusion pathway might be really powerful for you because there's a little bit more isolation in that tradition. If you're doing it to kind of get into your body and open your lower chakras and activate the Kundalini, then the Rakshaki, the sort of the Egyptian tradition, might be more and for seduction rituals too. It's very seductive to dance for your partner, which is where the Sifti Teli comes from. And I told that story yesterday in class about my aunt and my uncle. I don't know that I've seen a more beautiful, intimate connection between a man and a woman in my lifetime outside of my relationships than that moment when he was clapping and she was dancing, and they only had eyes for each other. It was one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen, and I was 22, and it really imprinted on me. This is what a relationship between intimate partners should look like. A man or a partner should look like at his or her or their partner like that. Frida Kahlo always says, find yourself a partner who looks at you like maybe you are the magic. And I do believe that. I think every person, and my aunt and uncle are still married. She's in her late 70s and he's in his mid 80s. He's a little bit older than my dad, and they still look at each other like maybe they are the magic. So it inspires me about what's possible in partnership. I hope it inspires you too, because it was kind of like witnessing a very sacred ritual between them. So cheers to that. It was really beautiful. Okay, so I'm going to ring my bell. I'm going to burn a little copal. I'm also going to share your scent tools for this month. Alexis is bringing me I want to give you the notes of the sound or the scent tools for this month, and I forgot my sheets at home this morning. So when you're rushy, that's what happens. But yeah, Frida Kahlo wrote a long letter to a friend of hers. I don't know if you read it. I posted it. I think I posted it, when was it, you guys? A couple of weeks ago on Facebook. But anyway, that quote, find a partner who looks at you like maybe you're the magic, was one part of her long post about what it looks like to be in partnerships. Radha and Krishna, for sure, right? I mean, when you think about it, this is the origin of all sacred movement. It's to integrate the masculine and the feminine within you. When we work with the Tingshas, which I've always worn them on my middle finger and my thumb. Some people wear them on their forefinger and their thumb. It's about integrating the masculine and the feminine. If you have one pair on one hand, it's masculine and feminine. If you have two pairs, I don't know if the team can bring me up a second pair. We only sent you one pair in your tools because we wanted to keep the cost of it down. But if you have 2 pairs, then you can sort of let the right hand be the masculine, right, the projecting hand, and the left hand be the feminine. And you can remember what she taught you yesterday, Samantha, about keeping your middle fingers together. So it's and you can keep it really simple. Just and you can start to include the, you know, the different movements from yesterday, right? The snake movements from yesterday. So it becomes very sexy. Yeah, so middle finger and thumb, or your index finger and your thumb, whichever fingers feel better to you. Yeah, they do have some leftovers, so yeah, sometimes they're able to bring me extras while we're live, and sometimes not, so it's okay. Now, I'm going to burn a little bit of copal because I am sharing with you some really beautiful wisdom from, like I said, from a teacher I met in the Mayan jungle not even 2 weeks ago. And when I spoke with him, I said, you know, our conversation was in Spanish, so I'm translating for you today into English. He asked me if I wanted to be taught in English or in Spanish. And I said Spanish because when you're, you know, I like to be taught in someone's native language. So I'm kind of loosely translating for you today from Spanish into English. But, you know, some of these teachings make sense, whatever language you are speaking. Ooh, that's too big a piece. Hold on. He was so brave. He would chew the copal into little pieces. I don't like to bite it. I don't like to bite copal. It leaves an aftertaste in my teeth that I can't get out. But he would take a big piece and bite it. I'm not going to be that brave with you today. I don't use copal and mako unless it's the powder. The resin with the mako powder doesn't quite do the same thing for me, so I like to burn the resin, the little pieces of the resin, which is what I have here, on a charcoal disc. But if you have the powder, you can certainly burn your powder on that. And then what I'm going to do is take just a little bit of our living incense for the month, which does have mako. Oh, mine's empty. Okay, so we're just going to stand by for Alexis for a minute. What you can do too is take your living scent and spray. Did you know this? Just a little bit on your charcoal disc. And then it'll diffuse the scent and all of the oils the same way you would in either way. So once your charcoal disc is lit and you put your copal in there, just a couple of mists of your living scent, and then I just do a little bit on my wrist for what I do, a little bit at my third eye for what I know, and a little bit at my, it smells so good with the copal especially, a little bit at my ankles for to bless my steps where I go. And then everything else goes on my clothes. Not my shawl. And I'm actually really serious. I don't wash my shawls very often. I hand wash them, but I hesitate. I picked up a red shawl the other night. Again, sorry, I'm kind of crouching, but I want you to not see the top of my head. I picked up my red shawl the other night, and I went to put it in the washing machine on the Gentle Cycle, and I inhaled, and it was like, I had been making our incense, the Love Draw incense, when I was wearing that shawl, and the whole shawl was covered in the powder. And it was like, I can't wash the shawl. Like, I cannot bear to wash the scent of that off, so I didn't wash it. So anyway, you might feel the same way. You might love just having your
I have a blue amber Merkaba.
Oh, thank you.
These are actually still available too.
No.
I'm so sorry.
No, it's weird.
Oh, no.
No, I think the full one might still be full. I think it was just my little mini one that didn't have incense in it. But thank you.
This one is from June.
Oh, I need my, yeah, okay, so.
I'll go get it.
Okay, and then, thank you.
Here's your prep doc. The punch list is on the last page.
Thank you.
And then, okay.
Is this on our website?
That's available.
That's really
Hi,
cool.
everybody.
Hi, yeah, I know, I didn't know if we had any Merkabas. It was kind of like, because I just talked about this during my Mexico trip, so I was like, oh, I forgot I wanted to talk about that. So anyway, and you might have a Merkaba in your collection, so what I'm going to tell you is, she brought this to me. This is beautiful. This is Indonesian Blue Amber, and I didn't know we had these, which is really, really cool. If you have a Merkaba in your gem or mineral collection, go grab it. I know. The Love Draw incense is really special. I burn it all the time. I have a little jar here in the office, and I'm constantly working with that. So that is always the right medicine. And then this is our last chance in class to burn our embodiment candle. So I do want to light that with you as well. Cheers to the work that we have done. One more pass for you. Making the Incan cross for you. Right? Crossing both of the Cartesian planes. Ooh. It's good stuff. Okay. Now, I'm going to talk now for a little while, and then I will leave plenty of time for questions and answers. We might have a little more time than usual. And what I will tell you is, if you have questions about my session with him, I'm totally open to sharing with you. I don't know particularly what you would like to know, but I did get to go in the middle of the Mayan jungle and spend 3 hours with a medicine person who, ironically, he and I are the same age. We are like almost literally the same age, and a lot of facets of our lives are similar. So it was really interesting. We both looked at each other and thought, I don't know that this meeting is so coincidental. So we've kept in touch, and post trip, just to kind of like things I thought about afterward, what they call l'esprit d'escalier in French. It's like the things you think about afterward that you wish you would have asked. So it's so nice to be able to ask him questions. And then I will say, if there are things that come up for you tonight where you think, oh, can you ask him this? Can you ask him that? Let me know. And I will ask him. He's been very kind and very generous. But the conversation was so expansive that I don't know that I can get to all of it tonight. And maybe it'd be fun to have him come here one day. We talked about that too. To LA to do kind of a session, with me and you, and do that together. So anyway, I'm going to share some of our conversation with you tonight. And then if you have questions about different things that come up while you're listening to us, because I'm sure in shamanism, there's the conversation, and then there's the conversation, right? There's the 3D conversation, everything I'm telling you that is in English and that you understand. And then there's what we call the meta conversation, which is the conversation above that conversation that is a light language, right? That isn't fully translated. So there might be questions that come through where you're like, I wonder what he would think about that. And like I said, I will be more than happy to pass that along to you or to him on your behalf. Okay, so I'm going to start at the beginning because you are here to learn about Zills. And I do want to talk about them a little bit because I have some things to say about it. So this whole month, do you guys remember that this year, our entire Living Magic program was kind of following what we called the pillars of priestessing. Next year will be different. We're already starting to plan next year's programs. And interestingly, some of the work I did with him, I took notes because he and I talked about it, like, you should be teaching this and you should be teaching that. And it's stuff I haven't really taught you before, not in that way. And so it was interesting. He and I started planning like next year's programs together while I was there, and it was an unanticipated surprise. Yeah, well, you're kind of here with a Facebook Live about my experience. So I'm going to share a lot with you tonight. And then, like I said, if you have questions after this, I'm happy to answer them to the extent that I can. So this whole month has been about embodiment. So the pillars of priestessing back in the day The eighth pillar of priestessing was embodiment. And it was, this is really important for you guys to hear. So if you want to stay in the feed and chat with each other, I'm totally down with that. I might recommend, just because it might get a little complicated, I'm drawing a little complex thread tonight, just going off the feed for a few minutes and being fully present here with me, and then we'll come back to Q&A when we're done, if that works for you. Okay. Embodiment is really important for spiritual work. And the reason is, if you think about it, we have, in every tradition, thank you, Alexis. I know, it's been a lot of going.
Okay.
It's okay. It's good that you're here, because I'm about to go into a deeper dive. So
Oh,
perfect. Yeah, your
There's
timing is
that
really
for
good.
you. Here's the lid. Do you have everything you need?
I
Okay.
I mean, in this dimension, yes, I am completely satisfied. By the way, you should look at your candle, because when your candle burns, there's these like golden sparkles that go into the black wax, and it's this total alchemy that happens. And it's, once in a while, just look over at your candle. It's putting on a light show for you that you may not have. I'm glad you like being in my kitchen. That was a fun addition this year, to bring you into my home. We've done it twice so far, and it's been really exciting and fun, so we've enjoyed it too. Okay, so I'm going to focus on the camera now. I'll come back to your questions in a little while. So, why is it important to be embodied? When I teach spiritual leadership, which is my area of expertise, I have a PhD in leadership from the University of Southern California, so a lot of you know that. I spent my entire 20th decade studying leadership with the biggest experts on the planet in business leadership, corporate leadership, interpersonal leadership, human resource leadership. I mean, that was my professional area of expertise. And then I spent my 30s trying to understand the nexus, the intersection of spiritual leadership and what you might call corporate leadership, right? So the leadership of your own soul, who you are and what you're here to do and why you chose to incarnate here, and then how you work with other people. I spent my entire 30th decade, or third decade, my 30th years, studying the nexus between spiritual leadership and human leadership. And I spent my 40s, I would say, really on integration of those two things. Okay? What does it mean to be a spiritual leader? That doesn't mean you lead other people. That can just mean you're leading yourself. You know, how do I live a good life? How do I honor my spiritual commitments and contracts? How do I not incur karma, right? Because the whole goal of a spiritual life is to get off the wheel of samsara. Somebody hurts us, so we hurt them, and then, and then now we're back on the wheel, right? Instead of, when something hurts us, instead of taking it inward and going, what am I supposed to learn from this? We retaliate, right? And so we create more energy in the world, and the cycle continues. And so spiritual leadership is about learning how not to do that, because you're going to get hurt in life. People are going to fail you, disappoint you, and leave you. Like, that is sort of one of you talk to any Buddhist, Christian, Muslim, doesn't matter what spiritual path they're on, they will tell you people are going to hurt you, fail you, and leave you, because we all die, we're all human, and we all make mistakes. So a spiritual leadership path is, how do I not create more spiritual dilemmas? How do I, when something happens around me, instead of making it someone else's challenge to fix, solve, or change, or remove, how do I bring that inward and ask, what am I supposed to be learning here? Because the natural impulse is, how do I take it outward, but then we're back on the wheel. And then there's a whole cycle that has to happen again, because now someone is going to fail, leave, harm, right? So that's the spiritual side of leadership. And then the professional side of leadership is, how do we act in alignment with our beliefs and values? You know, every company has a mission statement and a vision statement, and it's what they want to do, and it's what they want to be, and it's how they want to move in the world. And so spiritual leadership is more like, how do we do this on the etheric plane? And interpersonal, professional leadership, business leadership, which is what I studied and taught for 15 years, is how do we do this with each other in a good way? Okay, so embodiment, how does that relate to embodiment? What I have found that I think is fascinating, and you may not, but this is why this whole class exists. The key is embodiment. When we are anxious, anybody have anxiety? We are not in our body. And again, it's hard for me to focus on my teaching and also look at the feed, so I'm not ignoring you if you're commenting. I just will come back to it later. When we're anxious, we're not in our body. When we're afraid, we're not in our body. Anxiety is, I don't know what's going to happen, so I can't be in this moment. Regret is, I can't fix what happened, so I can't be in this moment. The reason every spiritual tradition teaches mindfulness, from Christianity to Buddhism to Islam to you name it, okay, they all teach a concept that they might not call it mindfulness, but it's mindfulness. The reason every tradition teaches mindfulness, which I'm going to tell you is embodiment, is because it prevents you from living a life where you live in the past with regret that you can't fix, and you don't live in the future with anxiety that you can't predict. How many of you have worried about something that could happen and it didn't, and you can't get that time back? And how many of you have regretted something that you did or that happened and you can't change it and you can't get that time back? So the lesson as we get older is, I'm just going to be here now, right? I'm just going to be here now. But it's the hardest thing to do, because everything in social media either puts us in a future tense, you could be this, you could do that, you could have this, right? Or it puts us in a past tense. It talks about your past relationships, your past wounding, your past, anxieties, your past mistakes. And if you did this, you should feel this way. Or if you did this, you should do this other thing. And so you're not here now. Tonight's class is about, and honestly, everything we're going to talk about. And I look around my altar, and everything on my altar is about, like, be here now. Burning a candle is about this moment. That flame is presence, right? It is the elemental force of courage and strength. When we burn incense, right, it's being here now. That smoke is here to clear what's here in this room in this moment. When we work with stones and talismans, right, it's a way of reminding us, like, okay, I'm here now. And again, our ancestors had an easier time with mindfulness because they didn't have social media. My mom had the phone with the curly cord, right? And when she would hang up the phone, there wasn't like text messages afterward. So she could control how long she was on that phone, and when she was done with the conversation, she could hang it up, and there was no more, if she didn't answer it, the phone wasn't there. It wasn't like the next day there were all these messages, right? So whether we're talking about zills, which we will be tonight, or we're talking about drumming, or we're talking about rattling, or vibration, this whole year of sound healing has been my effort, my intention, to remind you that the greatest healing in your life comes from being fully embodied in this moment, which means you release the past, and that's really hard to do, and you release the future, which is really hard to do, and you just stay here. Now, sometimes the here and now is not easy. Sometimes the here and now is stressful or sad. You know, like my day yesterday and this whole weekend was sad for me. It was the anniversary of my mom's passing, and but I really did a lot of spiritual leadership for myself, which was, I'm going to fully be in this moment. And I'm just going to be in that moment of remembering her. I'm not going to distract myself. I'm not going to go out and do stuff. I'm not going to be on my phone the whole time. I'm just going to be here now and just be fully present to the importance of this weekend. For the 50 years that she gave me, the least I could do this weekend was just be fully in remembrance and honoring of her, which is what I did. And it felt really right? But it would have been really easy for me to ignore it, to just sit and scroll on my phone, to just talk with people and just, you know, rehash things versus fully being present in the moment. Okay? So that's what I wanted to say about embodiment. Now, when I was in the jungle with Luis, who was the shaman I spent time with, and again, I'm translating for you from Spanish to English, but we were talking about concepts that I think you will understand very, very well. He said, because I asked him, how do you stay in the moment? When you have, this was 2 weeks ago, but I was like, when you have constant distraction, even though you're in the middle of the primordial jungle, right, the Yucatan Peninsula, and it's a jungle that the Mayans have defended for thousands of years. And then the Maya had factions within the Maya who were fighting each other. It's not like the Mayans were one cohesive people and the Aztecs were one cohesive people. The Maya had all these subdivisions of Mayan subcultures that were in war with each other, and they would hide in different parts of the jungle, and if you went to this part of the jungle you were in danger, and this other part of the jungle you were in danger. So there was always this kind of like hiding, and you can in the jungle, you can hide, right? Because it's all flat, but it's the water goes in and out and up and down, and there's all these vines, and you can hide, right? So he said, the way I think of it, and this is what I wanted to give to you tonight, and we'll talk again, we'll go back to the Zills, but I want you to meditate on this concept for a second. And he asked me, do you know Merkaba? And I said, light, spirit, body. And he said, yes. So in ancient Egyptian, this symbol, the Merkaba, meant light, spirit, body. Mer is light, Ka is spirit or magic. It's Ku, right, in Maya. And Ba is body. And he said that the what's fascinating is the Egyptians were Atlantean and the Mayans are Atlantean. And so he said all of us in Mayan culture consider ourselves hybrid Atlanteans. And so we believe in the Merkaba. We believe that there is a light that comes to us from higher dimensions. There is a spirit that is within us, right? It's the part of us that doesn't die. And then there's the body, which is the vehicle, you know. And he said what people forget when they're outside of when they're in modern civilization, they don't live near a exotic jungle. He said, you know, they forget how beautiful the body is. We're so lucky to have a body. If any of you were in my angel retreat, we talked about this too, how the angels weep to be human. Because the angels don't get to hug or kiss or make love or eat, or the angels don't have that tactile experience. There's something about being human. And it was such a like colliding of my worlds to hear him talking in Spanish about like how blessed we are to have bodies. That through these bodies we can have this experience of embodiment, of being, of touching, of seeing, of sensing. Everybody when I was there was worried about the hurricane, the huracan. And he said, I'm not worried about it. And he said, look around. And I was looking with him. And he said, when there's a hurricane coming, all of the plants drop their leaves and open like this to receive the rain. And so he's like, there's no hurricane coming here because the plants are upright. If the plants go like this, you take shelter in the jungle. If the plants are upright, there's no hurricane. The plants know before we know what's coming, right? So he was like, none of us are worried because the plants are upright. And he was right. There wasn't any rainfall the whole time I was there in the middle of that hurricane that was hitting California and the whole West Coast. It never hit the Yucatan. And so he said, he said, you watch though, if the plants drop, the rain is coming. And he's like, the plants are embodied. They're not watching the news or scrolling on their phone or like listening to anything. The plants are literally like, is there rain coming? Yes. Is there rain coming? No. And you can tell by watching the plants and their embodiment and their resonance with the frequency. He's like, it's a frequency. Water's a frequency. If it's coming, the plants know they have to prepare to hold it, so they open to receive the frequency. If it's not coming, they know to tighten because they don't need to prepare for it. So fascinating, right? So he's like, nature teaches us we don't need our phones and we don't need anything other than our own internal wisdom to make progress. And he's like, it's the same with human beings, right? We have our own internal mechanisms, but we're so used to looking to the outside world to try and receive information that we lose track of our own wisdom. So what he was saying was, and this is where I want to show you this, and then I want to work with the Zills, because he was talking about higher pitch frequencies and how they activate and they integrate the light spirit body. So he's like, the drumming, because he's a drummer like me and he loves to drum and he drummed for me, but he's like, the drumming doesn't activate the light spirit body, the light body. It doesn't activate the fifth dimension. It's more grounding. He said the higher frequencies are the ones that activate the higher consciousness. So that's why you're talking about Merkaba. So he said, if you have a Merkaba, what you have to do is spin it, which I've always taught you that, right? He's like, spin it clockwise, and you're going to see what happens. So he said, and I will share this with you. This is his theory. I thought it was beautiful. He said that the Mayan calendar, he said, do you know how it was made? And I said, well, I've heard theories. What's your theory? And he said, that a bird in its beak took in plant medicine, something from the jungle, and like received it through its beak, and then turned around and etched it with its beak. He said it's etched, it's not engraved. So a bird, and then and etched the whole Mayan calendar from the jungle. And I was like, well, you know what? That makes sense. And we were talking about, I said, so my theory with the pyramids is they were built through sound. And he's like, absolutely, they were built through sound. And he's like, but how do we get things from the fifth dimension of reality, which is the dimension of dream and love, right? There's no pain, there's no anger, there's no shittiness, there's no anxiety, there's no tension, there's no fighting, there's no fear, none of that exists outside of the third and fourth dimensions of reality. So he said, everything amazing on this planet, including human life, is made in the fifth dimension that you access through the Merkaba. So he said, when I'm trying to create something beautiful, I look at this shape, I imagine it spinning, I close my eyes, I create in my mind what I want to bring through. I'm like the bird pulling the nectar, right? I see it spinning, and then I etch it in the third dimension. I bring it from the dimension of dreams and love, and I breathe it into, with my life force, into the dimension of reality, which I thought was really beautiful. So, but he said that's why we work with singing bowls. That's why we work with Zills. That's why we work with tools for a higher frequency of sound. And you can actually take your, I don't have, I can show you with my rattle from Alexis. You can actually... So if you don't want to play them the traditional way, you can actually play them like that. You can play them like Tingsha's, which is... Yeah, so the way you hold the Merkaba or the Merkaba is you don't hold it like a square. That's beautiful. But you turn it point to point. So, and I've told you the story before, but so I try not to repeat my stories, but I'll tell you really quickly because I shared it with him too. When my aunt died, my mom was in the room. And my mom was super spiritual, very gifted medium and psychic, but she was not familiar with sacred geometry. Okay? But she was in the room when my aunt died and saw her spirit leave her body, and she drew sort of like out and in and spinning. She said your aunt's soul left her body in this like spinning like pyramid of light. And she said it literally like came up from her body and spun and stopped at the door and kind of looked back at her and then went through the door and left the door. And he and I talked about that we all come in through a Merkaba, we leave through a Merkaba. Like this is how we come into the crown chakra. We come in through the soft spot, right? And we leave through the crown chakra. And then our soul comes in and embodies the whole thing. And then we leave through the crown chakra and soul star chakra when we go back to the fifth dimension, right? So yeah, it has to be able to spin. So if you're holding it this way, you can spin it, but it's not going to spin the same way as if you hold it point to point, which is how it actually spins when it's activated through the frequencies. So that's an important question. Okay. What else did I want to tell you about that? So sound is a vehicle. High-pitched, high-frequency sound is a vehicle to bring thought and thought and dreams into form and matter. Sound, high-pitched sound, is a vehicle to bring thought and dream into the dimension of form and matter. Thought and dream and love is fifth dimension. Form and matter and structure is third dimension. So if you don't have a Merkaba, this is just to remind you, right? It's great to meditate with, but if you don't have one, you can actually close your eyes and visualize that, which is what we're going to do with our zills. So the zills are a little loose, as we talked about yesterday, because some people's fingers are wider and some people's fingers are smaller. I have smaller fingers. So you can wrap them around your fingers twice, which was Alexis's trick, because some people tie them in knots. Samantha ties them in knots. But you can also just kind of wrap them around your finger, and that works just as well. But you want them to be a little bit snug. You don't want them to be loose because so, and I know I said get back to questions later, but I just saw Melanie's question, and it is true. This is why animals, birds, cats, dogs, they will hear things, they will turn their head, and you're like, what are they hearing? Because you're not hearing anything. Their sound spectrum is at a much higher frequency than ours. It's why animals respond to sonar. They have their own, there's like dolphins have it. Very high-pitched sonar frequency. Sometimes it's so high-pitched that humans can't detect it, but they're communicating with each other. Everything, light and sound, is on a spectrum. The human ability to hear is limited. The human ability to see is limited. We are cut off. Now you can ask me why. What I will tell you is I don't know why. I have a theory. My theory is if we could see everything and feel everything and sense everything, it would be very hard to stay here. If you knew what was beyond 3D, it would be hard to stay here and just be human and do your job and be in relationships and accept sorrow and grief and loss and fear and anxiety, because those things don't exist in the higher frequencies. They just simply don't exist. When you get to a higher dimension of reality, if I asked you, okay, now feel fear, you'd be like, what's fear? And if I said, okay, now feel angry, you're super pissed off, you'd be like, I can't, you know, it's just like, you can't even get to those emotions. So it's a very 3D experience. Sometimes when I'm afraid or angry or frustrated, I remind myself, like, this is so human of me to be in these emotions. It's not a bad thing. It's just like, I can't stay stuck here. Do you know what I mean? Because it prevents me from doing the deeper soul work that I know I'm here to do. It bogs me down. And it's discouraging, right? But yeah, it's like you can't know what that is if you really believe in it, or if you've ever had the experience of it. And some people haven't. They've never had a 4D or 5D experience, so they're just here going, you know, this is what it is or whatever. And my mom was like that. I mean, she was a very spiritual person, but she never had an experience of like the higher dimensions of emotion. And so for her, it was like, if she was mad about something, she would stay mad, she would hold a grudge, she would, you know, hold on to it for decades and stuff. Like, that's very 3D versus just like, what am I supposed to be learning from this? Okay. And summoning a higher frequency to come through and spin the energy through for you. And then, as I've always taught you, take the energy from this third dimension space and send it either down into the earth to alchemize it, right, to sort of compost it, or send it up to the fifth dimension to transform it into pure light and love, and then bring it back here and work with it in that new reformed state. And again, that might all sound crazy, but that's what I know to be true. So coming back to Zills, the Merkaba is stimulated, interestingly enough. This is where all the teaching kind of winds in on itself, and I go, holy shit, it's all connected. Did you know that to activate your Merkaba, you take your middle finger and your thumb. This is the mudra for Merkaba activation. Not kidding. And that's the traditional fingers that sit with the Zills. Is that crazy or what? So you can put them on your index finger and thumb, but the activation of the Merkaba happens between the middle finger and the thumb. And it's interesting too when you look at the shape of the Merkaba, right? Middle finger and the thumb and the middle finger, right? It's sort of this, I did this earlier, I don't know if I can do it again, right? You can hold it almost perfectly between the two. It's like a sandwich between the energy of your hand. I know. So even if you don't have a Merkaba stone, if you have the Zills, you can activate the energy of the Merkaba. It's crazy. Now, I believe that our ancestors knew it. Again, the Mayans are Atlantean. The Egyptians were Atlantean. The Mesopotamians were Atlantean. The Atlanteans created sacred geometry. Why are we surprised, right? They created this. This isn't something that like, oh, where did it come from? It's Atlantean. Everything geometric, everything in terms of shape and sound and frequency. The pyramids were created by the Atlanteans, right? The Atlanteans knew how to take sound and move structures. Luis and I were talking about this. He was like, you know, people still ask me, how did you get a pyramid into Egypt because there's no science to prove, like, how did anyone do that? He's like, humans didn't do that. There was a fifth dimensional vision of a sound chamber, and then through the visualization, they brought it through the Merkaba from the fifth dimension into the third dimension, and now it's on the Giza Plateau. We have just forgotten how to do this. So I'm going to do a little meditation with you before we're done tonight, if it's okay. A Merkaba meditation. Because a lot of you have things you want to create in this life. I do. I'm sure you do. You know, no, I don't have as many as I did in my 20s. You know, as we get older, it's like, well, but like, I have a vision, for example, which might sound silly, but like, I want to redo my, my herb garden and my vegetable garden at home. It's not a huge project, but I'm not going to do it this year, but I have a vision for like what I want to do with it. And it's inspired by the jungle. It won't be easy. And I don't even know who to talk to help me with it. So what I'm going to do in my meditation tonight might sound simple and silly. I'm going to visualize my herb garden, my vegetable garden for 2024. And I'm going to call in from the fifth dimension everything I need to bring it into the third dimension. Because it matters to me. Next year I want to do that. It's like kind of my project. The pyramids in Mexico are the same. I mean, listen, I was like, I could throw a stone and hit Tulum where I was, right? So the pyramids in Mexico and the pyramids in Egypt and the pyramids they're finding under Antarctica, by the way, they're finding pyramids as the ice is melting. I'm sure you know this. Were all made the same way. They were envisioned on the fifth dimension plane of reality, and they were activated through the Merkaba, and they were brought to the third dimension in physical form. But if you think about it this way, forgive my voice. If you think about it this way, okay? Everything in your life, probably from your relationship to children, if you have them or wanted them, to maybe even where you live, or your friendships that you have, or at some point seemed unrealistic, didn't it? Like, oh, I don't know, could I ever have a love like that? Could I ever have a family like that? Could I ever have a job like that, right? At some point, those things, even if you don't want them now, seemed kind of probably like hyperbolic, like a little unrealistic, a little bit like, whoa, I don't know if I can have that or create that. And then, but some part of you is like, I just want to kind of dream about it. I'm going to daydream about it. And then all of a sudden you go from thinking, like, I have a friend who always wanted to be a librarian, a college librarian, but she didn't even graduate from high school. And she was like, this is so unrealistic. Like, how am I going to be a college librarian? And she is now. And it was her dream to be a college librarian. And she got her AA degree and her bachelor's degree and her master's degree in library science. And she's living her dream. I mean, she literally fantasized about, like, that's my dream, is to help college students with their term papers and graduate students with their master's thesis. And I don't know, it's so unrealistic. And she had little kids, like, how am I going to get through school? And she found a way to do it online. And I'm just giving you kind of like a more mundane example, but it can be a relationship or a job or a dream or a profession or having a family or whatever it is. And I don't think we ever get too old. I mean, Luis and I were talking about that too, because he's in his latest 40s and I just turned 50. And it's like, we're not too old, right? I mean, spirit doesn't have an age. So it's sort of like, it's the vibration and the frequency that you carry more than like the age and the time, right? So yeah, something you may not love where you are or who you're with or what's going on around you, but it is good for you to remember that at some point you wanted it. So even if you hate it now and you hate that person you're with and you hate that job that you're in or whatever, sometimes it's good to stop and go, this was a dream. I can dream of a new dream, but at the time, this was exactly what I wanted to be doing with the person I wanted to be doing it with and there's a place to be grateful for that, right? This was the kind of community I wanted to be part of. This was the kind of friendships I wanted to experience, and I called all that in. And then the job is to figure out what the new Merkaba is. And that's the meditation for today. What's the new vision? Now, is it accidental that we're doing this on the edge of the full blue supermoon in Pisces, which is the sign of dreams, with no eclipse activity? And the last full blue supermoon we're going to have until, Tara can correct me if she's watching, what's the year? I mean, it's quite a few years before we're going to have another full blue supermoon, and especially in Pisces. Like, it's not happening again next year, right? So is it a coincidence that we're talking about big dreams, big imagination, big fruition, big, going to the fifth dimension and then pulling it into the third dimension? Is it an accident that we're doing it today? I don't think so. 2032? Yeah. It's 2023 right now. Do your math. We're going to be a little different. I'm going to be 59 when that next full blue supermoon comes along. Hope to still be rocking it with you. But it'll be a little bit different, right? So I'm dreaming now with this big full blue supermoon into what my 50s will look like. And at that point, I'll be dreaming into what my 60s will look like, right? As we all will be moving into our next space and time. Okay. So like I said, there's different ways to play these. You can play them on your fingers. You can strike them with your You can play them like tingshes and strike them together, right? Yeah. It's all good, right? It's very exciting. Okay. Zil comes from the Persian word zir, which means a very sharp sound, and also the Mesopotamian word zer, Z-E-R, which means underneath, the sound underneath. And it takes us back 3,000 years before Christ, when these were originally made with wood and ivory, which I think is really amazing. And then the Greeks and the Romans, God bless all of us, right? Greek and Roman, but they co-opted them. Isn't that cool? Yeah, it'll be actually right after my 59th birthday, that next one. But the Greeks and the Romans kind of stole it, and then they made them in wood and ivory. But I mean, history is what it is, right? So one civilization makes them, and the next civilization comes along and goes, oh, this is cool, I'm gonna make them in wood and ivory. And now all of a sudden we have them in brass, which I think is probably also an homage to the Tibetan and Nepalese cultures and the tingshes, which is what they've kind of evolved to be known as. And so, yeah, we do have some of these if you would like them still available for you. So on your worksheets, Sound Healing August 2023 on page 1, we talked about these as finger cymbals, or sagat. They're small little percussion instruments. They do have African origins, like I said, and then from Northern Africa, everything spills out. The Greeks and the Romans picked them up. When you're working with your zills, try to develop simple rhythmic patterns that align with the intention of your session. Gentle repetitive rhythms, I'm in the middle of page 1. Gentle repetitive rhythms can induce a meditative state. More complex patterns can create a more invigorating and refreshing energy as you play your zills. Sync your breathing and your movements. Right? You can speed your breath up, and you can slow it down. It's very much like drumming. Incorporating it into dance. We talked about this earlier, right? Can engage you on all levels to be fully present in your body. Combining expressive movement and sound vibration creates a safe space for catharsis. And then on page 2 of your worksheet, The reality is across, I mean, it's probably because I'm a historian, but across traditions, like, people will debate, like, where did the Zills come from? Persia, Mesopotamia, Egypt, and most of us agree they're African, but is African from, Tanzania or Zaire, or is it properly from Egypt, or did it come from South Africa? Like, it's very hard to, because every culture has a version. And then we see them in Tibet and Nepal in the form of tingshes. So it's sort of like, and then they engrave theirs with sacred symbols, which differentiates them from the North Africans. So it's just, they're all different, but then they all have the same lineage. So free form movement, which is just letting your arms float. Elemental dance, which means you can, begin. I'm finding east, right? So to south, to west, to north, to make a circle. Body mapping, so you can actually track, you can go through your chakras, see if the sound changes. Yeah, my heart chakra is definitely a little... flatter here. Do you not hear it? Listen. It's weird, right? Same movement, so you can sort of track your chakras too. You can play music. You can turn on music. Some of the music, did you hear it? I did it like 3 times for you. My heart chakra falls flat. Animal-inspired movements, so like, you can play YouTube videos of animals like, elephants or jaguars or whatever, and try to keep up with them or slow it down and see if you can track the animal movements with it too. And then we left a little bit of room on page 2 for you to think about, like, well, what are other ways that you could incorporate the energy of Zills? The root chakra, any kind of movement that connects you with your body. So the swaying of your hips, right? And we taught you that yesterday with the figure 8s, right? So you can, or the washing machine. Rhythmic dancing. So everything that Samantha and I taught you yesterday fits right into this whole flow. You can also work with Zills to sort of raise Kundalini. So you can start at your root chakra. That's right down here if y'all don't know. And remember, the snake sort of sits at the root chakra. And just little circles to bring it up. Solar plexus, just kind of like empowering, strengthening the cord, right? And then all the things in between. So those are a lot of our suggestions for you. And then you have a little place on page 3 where you can record some of your own experiences with it. So what I would like to do now is just a brief, this isn't going to be a huge extended remix meditation. I want to leave plenty of time for Q&A today because I have a feeling you're going to have a lot of questions. And it's nice because we've talked so much about embodiment this month on so many levels, right? We've talked about crystals of embodiment and garnet, and sort of like how garnet can fully bring you into the moment, and how much it matters to be in the moment. It's actually the secret to everything. I was just talking to my kids about this a couple of weeks ago. It's like young people live so much in the future. They're either idealizing it, like it's going to be so great, or they're terrified of it, like what if I'm not successful, or what if I don't make the team, or whatever. So they're either idealizing it and setting themselves up for some failure there, or they're anxious about it, which is like what if. They don't often live in the past. Adults live in the past. Well, I could have done this and I should have done that, and that wasn't the right thing, and how do I make that right, right? And so it's like this whole life's whole movement is about getting you to be fully embodied and present in this moment. Yeah, so any questions you want to ask about my trip and my time with him, I want to leave extra space for that. So I'm just going to quickly open a circle. I'm not going to like huge, turbocharge it tonight, but just a quick calling in the guides and the guardians of the directions to be present with us. If you have a Merkaba, I have a little enter to win for tonight and tomorrow, which I'm going to charge. It's actually a quartz pendant that has a full double terminated quartz point inside of it, which is not an inner child. This is a manifestation point. It's very rare to find quartz that has a complete double terminated and it's very visible quartz point inside of it. And Alexa said you don't have to have a code for it. So if you order today or tomorrow, the Satyaloka quartz is at sagegoddess.com, the last of it from the Synergy 12. So I think if you already shop today, you're good, and then you'll have until tomorrow. So I'm going to hold that as well in my left hand to hold the energy. And I'm going to put the Merkaba in my lap, okay? Because you want to stabilize. The Merkaba, again, is sort of like, has Kundalini energy. So I'm going to put it point up in my lap as a meditation tool. I just want you to close your eyes and roll your shoulders back. Call your energy into present time. And watch your breath. It's nice if you can put your feet flat on the floor or sit cross-legged. It's okay too. My feet are on the floor. You're just finding that grounding space. And I'm going to start in the east, welcoming in all of the energies of the east, new beginnings, new visions, new possibilities, new creations. Then I'm going to call in energies of the south, courage, transformation, possibility, passion. I'm calling in energies of the west, healing, renewal. I'm calling in energies of the north, grounding, stability, passion. But passion really for your purpose, your reason for being here, right? The call of the ancestors in the north. I often think about like grandparent energy in the north, long ancestral lineage energy in the north. And then back to the east, just to close that circle. Can be your new way of opening your circle too, now that you have them. So I want you to gently bring your energy and your awareness to your heart. Just to your heart chakra. You can bring it to your third eye too. I'm going to my heart. I create from my heart. Yeah. And I want you to imagine from your heart space tonight, what is something you want to create, to experience, to have, to hold? Something that isn't in your life now in the form you want it to be, but it's like, it's tangible, it's visible, it's possible. I want you to bring your whole awareness, your whole attention to that. Like I said, for me, right now it's my garden. Silly, but it's true. It could be love, it could be success, it could be health. And what I'm going to do So I'm going to follow the line of the Merkaba. What we're doing is we are moving up, it's not really up, it's out, to the fifth dimension of reality, where everything is possible, everything already exists. And just like the Egyptians with the pyramids, right? We're going to pull it down. As above, so below. As within, so without. As above, so below. As within, so without. As above, so below. As within, so without. You can see in the shape, right? To the west, to the north, to the east, to the south. As above, so below. As within, so without. To the east, to the south, to the west, to the north. As above, so below. As within, so without. To the east, to the south, to the west, to the north. As above, so below. As within, so without. Fun, right? I mean, that's a whole different take on belly dance, but that's why I tried to bring in this kind of like sacred geometry, manifestation, multi-dimensional awareness, and co-collaboration, co-creation with the universe, and ancient cultures and Atlantis, and how they all came to give us geometry and process and structure and sound and teach us how to move structures with sound. If we can move a pyramid, we can move a relationship, right? I mean, can't we? And I'm telling you, the one thing I'm going to say, because people always say this with sound tools, they're like, well, you can do that, but I mean, when I do it, it's going to sound not like that. You put it on your thumb and you face it toward And we have these still at sagegoddess.com. You can just get the Zills. So if you want, and they have a little hummingbird on them, which is really cute. And I did a purple cord because purple. Put the other one on your middle finger, facing toward each other, okay? So turn the middle finger toward the thumb and the thumb toward the middle finger in. And do a little figure 8, right? Scoop your peanut butter. Yeah, they're like $12. They're so cute. You have to use your code. Your code is blue, but they're $12. And it's fun, and you will use them all the time. And you can, like I said, you can use them like tinctures, where you don't even put them on your fingers. You just use them like little tinctures. Or you can strike them with your, you know, with your drum and your mallet. It's really cool, isn't it? And it's sexy too. Some people want a second pair because they want to do the they want to do both hands at the same time, and I'm not going to turn you away from that. You got one set with your tools if you want to go in and get a second set, which is kind of traditional in belly dance to have them on both hands. You can go and get a second set of Zills, which is why we over-ordered in case anybody wanted a second set. We just wanted to keep the price of your tools the same, so. But if you want a second set, you can totally go and get them. Even you can Zill. Okay, so with that, I'm going to release our guides and guardians, thanking all of them from the directions and the dimensions for being present for our Zill ceremony today. And may everything that you called in from the 5th dimension and beyond manifest perfectly and in perfect time here in the 3rd dimension. And together we say Amenaho, and so it is. So it is. So now I am all yours. I am all yours. Which class did we go over the double terminated snake pendant in our tools? I'm always bad at that, but I guarantee you Alexis and Karen are good at it. They have like a record of every class and everything. I always lose track. Like, was it April of this year? And then they're like, no, it was June of this year. So they will do that for you. Why do I think this ancient knowledge was lost? That's a really good question. You know, I've always been fascinated, I'll put it this way. Since I was a very little girl, my dad used to read mythology and history books to me, and then I got kind of hooked on it myself as a young adult, and then obviously made it my passion as a grown adult. We always think of our ancestors as being kind of like, I mean, I do anyway, but like being primitive. Like even my grandmother not having, you know, yeast for bread, so she had to use ash, you know what I mean? It's like, oh my God, she didn't even have yeast. But we have to be careful with that, right? The ancient civilizations were simple in some ways and highly advanced and evolved. You know, when I was spending time with Luis, we were talking about the Mayan calendar, and he said, you know, what keeps magic alive for me in my practice is how precise the Mayan calendar is. He's like, it's way more precise than the Roman calendar that we follow today. And he's like, the mathematical precision of it and the mathematical precision of the building of the pyramids at Chichen Itza or on the Giza Plateau. He's like, you know, it's just, you just can't deny it. And so you look and you say, well, if we were going to build those pyramids today, and we're talking about the Mitchell Hedges skull too, and he's like, there's no evidence that tools were used to carve that skull. How did they do it? So it's just really easy, I think. I think we almost want to think of our ancestors as being like primitive and not being as wise as we are because we have internet or whatever. And it's just not true. In fact, I think they had access to a lot more wisdom and information than we do today, which is really powerful. I really do. So yeah, so Daria, I don't know. I also think that if you look at cultures and how they were, like the Mexicans and the Spaniards, for example, the Spaniards invaded Mexico and really made a concerted effort to destroy a lot of the ruins and records of the Mayan and Aztec civilizations because they wanted to take over. So there's a lot of loss that happens when one culture sort of like dominates another culture or invades another culture and then says, well, now you're all going to follow this faith tradition, or now you're all going to read this language, right? There's a lot that gets lost in that process, and it's tragic because language gets lost, practices get lost. We have less of that now, but when you look at if you're interested in all of this, like, get yourself a good book on Mayan history. I've been studying Mesoamerica and the Toltecs and the Olmecs for dozens of years, and it's a fascinating sort of story about like what happens when one country or one culture or civilization sort of overtakes another. Then there's a lot that gets lost, and it can be the language, but it can also be a lot of this really sacred ancient wisdom that gets lost in the process too. Let's see. Oh, I love it. Liz Dan said, when I was 6, I met Fred Astaire in a hotel in Spain, and he taught me how to play castanets. How cool is that? I bet you remember that moment like it was yesterday. I bet you do. And like, well, you'll never forget that moment. And it's the same. And again, what's cool is it's like all the same tradition. It's all the same kind of lineage. And it's just different names that we call things and different pathways that we learn. But oh my goodness. How incredible is that? Oh, well, I'm glad you're here, Sabrina, and you can watch later for sure. So more stories of the trip. Sarah, Karen will help you accessing your previous month's classes for sure. Let's see. Let's see. What was your specific intention when you went to see the shaman? I always have the same intention when I see any teacher, which is to see more clearly what is not visible to me right now. Which might sound really silly. I don't go in with like, oh, I want this, or I hope I get this, or it's always, show me what's not clear to me right now. And it was interesting because he kept saying the word clarity in Spanish, and I did. I think I walked away with a lot of clarity. What I love about being in jungles, I've only been in a couple in my life, but what I love about being in La Selva, right, like the where you're almost just buried in nature, is it strips everything off of you. Like you you just, first of all, you sweat like you're in a sweat lodge, right? So it literally strips off like makeup and layers and masks and facades, and it's just you and your raw kind of natural state, which I love. But it also strips away, like, there's a sense of comfort and ease. And what's really cool about the Mayan civilization that kind of differentiates them from the Aztecs, the word Maya means no pain. Maya. Ma means no, and ya means pain. They were incredibly wise pharmacologists. They really understood the different plants of the jungle, what they call plantas de poder, and how to work with those plants in a sacred, good way. And my intention wasn't to come and talk about plant medicine with him, and we didn't do any plant medicine at all. In fact, it was just a very simple Olympia ceremony where we worked with fresh herbs like basil and rosemary and very things you probably have growing in your garden. So it was a very simple, it was mostly a conversation. But the conversation was intriguing because it really took us back to, what is the point of being here? It's a dream. Right? Carlos Castaneda, if you've read some of his work, he's one of my favorite authors, and he talks about how this everything that we have and do and experience here is a dream. One day that dream will be over, and this place will seem really far away. but the struggles and the challenges that we go through, and we get so steeped and mired, and we get like righteous and kind of indignant, and it's because we're really in that mentality of like, this is all there is, this is all that matters, without kind of, he called it being the observer, right? Like being the Lakevea, the one who sees, the one who watches. And like, I call it going to the balcony, like rising above where you are to see the choreography, because it puts things in perspective. And I think that for me, my intention was clarity, and then we ended up talking a lot about being the witness observer rather than the participant in your life. And it's an interesting transition from being in one place to the other. Yeah. I can share, I don't have the titles right here, but I can definitely look in my library at some of the Olmec and Toltec history books that I have. He said something, and I don't know if there's basis for truth in this, so this was him, not me. But I asked him, so here was the conversation. He said, because I said I would really love to hear you speak in Maya, and he did a little bit. And it's interesting because my name, Athena, in Maya, it means 12. And my full name in Maya means 12, all the medicine again. That's what my name translates to directly in Maya. The number 12, all the medicine again. And he was like, we could sit all day and hash through that. Like, you're here with all the tools. And I was like, I'm the magician in the major arcana of the tarot. And he's like, yeah, all the medicine again. So what are you going to do with it this time, right? Like 12 is the completion of cycles, right? So, but anyway, I wanted to hear him speak in Maya. And he said, of all the people in the world, it's often people from China, and North China in particular, who understand Maya best. And I said, do you think it's because a lot of the original Olmec Toltec people of Mexico migrated from Siberia and northern China because the land masses were all together at the time? And he said, yeah, if you look at a lot of, he said especially like northern Yucatan folks, they have sort of Asian features, and it's because they can trace their lineage back to North Asia. And so when the original inhabitants of Mexico arrived, they were wearing furs because they had crossed these land masses from these like really cold regions. And then now here they are in this like really hot environment, and they adapted and overcame and sort of like let go of the fur and all these things and had to adapt to a different climate. But when the land masses were connected, that was sort of the origin story. So anyway, it's fascinating to me. Like, this is why I was telling you, it was a 3-hour conversation that led us in every direction, from like, what are the roots of the actual physicality of the Mayan civilization to like the ancient roots going back to Atlantis and Lemuria. And we were talking about, he's like, if you believe in Atlantis and Lemuria, then you have to believe in everything else. He's like the light codes that come through the Bermuda Triangle directly impact the Yucatan Peninsula. And the other thing we were talking about too, and again, I don't know, you guys can tell me what's interesting to you or not. I think you know this. The asteroid that destroyed the dinosaurs, the name of it escapes me. One of you will know it. Struck. So here's, let me draw it for you. Let me do a shitty drawing for you. I was telling my kids about this too, because I think this is just interesting, right? But here's sort of the Yucatan Peninsula, and here's Cancun, right? And here's sort of the Yucatan Peninsula. The asteroid, and I guess here's Florida. Look at what a shitty drawing that is. But anyway, this is Mexico, right? The asteroid that destroyed the dinosaurs, and over here we have, the Baja Peninsula, struck right here. And here's where I was, which was just a little bit east of Cancun. So that asteroid created what are called cenotes, which are these vibrant pools of water across Mexico, and they're all connected across the jungle. Yeah, Chicxulub. I'm gonna mispronounce it, but anyway, I think it was 6 miles wide. The asteroid that hit. But he's like, that was 60 million years ago. Every Moldavite, Libyan gold tektite, Columbianite, whatever ite you look at, formed after that, right? It changed the entire mantle and crust and really almost to the core of our planet, because it shook the entire planet, created acid rain, caused the destruction of all the species, led us into different ice ages and all those things. And so, yeah, 6 miles, 10 kilometers wide, was right there. And so we were sitting next to a cenote. We were meeting, like me sitting here with you, and like this chair was a cenote, okay? And he's like, that is that. Like, we are sitting next to the impact point of the utter destruction of our planet as we knew it. Just big moments, right? Like, really intense. Is it possible to buy real live white sage plants to grow? It is absolutely possible. You should look online. There used to be, you should Google it. I don't know if they exist anymore. There used to be a native plant nursery north of San Diego, near a little town called Rainbow. And they used to ship. I don't know if they're open anymore. This was all pre-pandemic, pre-COVID. If they don't, I mean, I don't have them to sell, and I don't have very many of them, but if you have a cutting of white sage, you can actually propagate it. It will root. It's temperamental. I tried 6 of them this year, and only 3 of them survived, so they're kind of hard to grow from root and from seed, but my dad's really good at it. But look up California native plant nurseries and call around. You can find white sage plants to grow. You don't remember going over this item in Crystalpedia or any of the other classes. Which one are you talking about? Let me know. Janet. Visual expansion. Let me see. Yeah, I mean, these are good books too. A lot of you are mentioning really good books. And like I said, Carlos Castaneda is sort of famous for talking about the dreamscape. And so honestly, and with Castaneda, like I think almost anywhere you start, because then you'll want to read more. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, Lillian's got a beautiful theory too. Lillian said, I wonder if it's because the planet is more or less in crisis, we tend to reach out more to old wisdom. I think so. Well, you know what? I'm gonna take your theory and kind of, Athenatize it to say, I think we're realizing that all of our modern conveniences haven't really made us happier. My dad always says the reason that people in our society are so depressed, because there weren't a lot of like antidepressants, right, in Greece when he was growing up, but he said, but we had our village. So if you were sad, you had somebody to talk to who really cared about you, or you had 20 people to talk to, and you didn't spend a whole bunch of time alone, and everybody was looking out for you. If you didn't feel well, there were 10 different people coming to bring you food and look after you and check on you the next day. And he's like, we're so isolated now that we lose track, right? And he said the flip side of that is we think that the people that we know online, are going to be there for us when we're having a hard time. And he's like, a lot of times those relationships are real, and a lot of times they're not. People will, it's like fair weather friendships kind of thing. And so he said, I think the problem is we don't have a village now. We're very spread out, and we don't have people knocking on the door and asking how you are, and who really care, right? And who are going to be there tomorrow and the next month and all of that too. So Juniper's asking about white sage too. So 3 years is the threshold. Your plants, if you're going to trim from them, need to be about 3 years old, or just take one cutting, but don't take more than that. White sage plants until the age of 3 are very sensitive, and you can kill the mother plant by taking too much. That's why they've made it, it's not legal now to go into like the desert here in California and just hack a plant, because people don't know, and they just cut and cut and cut, and then the mother plant is just left to die, and it's kind of tragic because it takes years for white sage to grow. So once you plant a plant, it's tempting because you'll see new shoots, but you really should wait at least 2 years and just take one cutting. At 3 years, you can take 2 cuttings, but the rule of thumb is never more than a third of the plant, because you will put the mother plant into shock. Yeah. I think we're missing a village. Now, the flip side of it is a village can be really annoying. I mean, do you want 10 people? I'm an introvert. Do you want 10 people showing up at your door going, no, but are you okay? No, but are you okay? How about some soup? Would you like some soup? But on the other hand, like, when there's nobody knocking, it's like, that kind of sucks too, right? Yeah, organized religion is dwindling. I will tell you, I don't see as many people wanting a church type of environment, but they do want a community type of environment. And again, I think this is the difference between a church and a village. People want to be cared for and connected. I have a theory, if this is interesting to you. I think we're going to see more, I always joke and call them communes. I'm not saying we're going to have communes. But I foresee that as our generation gets older, I can foresee us wanting to live more together and off of the land, growing our own food and vegetables, and wanting to kind of like have each other nearby, as opposed to wanting to be separated and not having, you know, nutritious food. And one of my role models for this is my friend Yasmina. Like, she really does this. You know, she lives close to the land. She's extremely healthy. She only eats food that's in season. She really only shops at the farmer's market, which is the best thing you can do if you can swing it. And if it's not in season, she doesn't really eat it, which your body only wants what's in season anyway. And I think it's a beautiful thing, because I think there's an urge to recreate the village, in a generation that doesn't have a village. So what do we do? Right? I'd be down with it too. But the thing is, I like to have people around. I do. I think life is more fun when you get to share it with people that you love than it is if you're just kind of isolated. But what's sad is we've set up a lot of our structures for older people is that they are kind of isolated, and I think it leads to a lot of sadness. Yeah, like Bonnie said, in Hawaii, they knew everyone on the street. They visited daily, and you probably knew what was going on. You know, so if you know, your neighbor 2 doors down wasn't feeling well, you probably knew that. And you were wondering what you could do, or bringing food, or just checking in, or whatever, and I think there's a sweetness to that. But here's the thing, and this has always been my theory, I don't think that humans were created to be in isolation. If that was the case, we wouldn't have the urge to be in dynamic, intimate relationship with each other. Because even introverts at some point want connection, right? So I really don't think we were intended to be alone. And I even think, you know, some of our, like, we're talking about belly dancing and zills, and all of these things are designed to be a dance that we share with and for someone. Right? I mean, this was all meant to be kind of we talked about this yesterday, like a seduction and an enchantment and a connection and a rising of this, you know, energy to be in partnership and union. And if we were meant to be a solitary, isolated civilization and culture, I think we would have had a different orientation. Interesting. Yeah. Well, we become so fixated on the nuclear family that we lose sight of this multi-generational village concept, right? And I don't think, I mean, I always say, like, I'm not here to talk about the pandemic, but I think COVID was really hard. You know what I mean? Like, it was just really hard. Like, you ended up in whatever people you were, 2 people or 4 people you were stranded with, and, you know, it's just like, it was really hard. I don't think it was good for us mentally. It is what it is. But I actually saw a really interesting study in a medical journal that came out about potential long-term health consequences of people being isolated for so long. Is it true? I don't know. I mean, honestly, we won't know probably until the end of the next generation. But what does this mean for us? I think it means the whole focus this month. Did my shaman speak English? Yeah, I mean, he did. Not to me, but, you know, every once in a while, because some of the concepts are so complex that we would throw in like an English phrase. But I prefer for people to teach me in their native language if I speak it, and I speak Spanish, so it was good to have that conversation in Spanish. Not Mayan, which is a whole other ball of wax. It's very complicated. Liz said when we lived in Panama, I received as gifts some Mayan artifacts. Wow. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a beautiful idea to donate them to a museum. It's crazy how much of that stuff I see sometimes like on eBay and Etsy and stuff, like artifacts. And I do think it's wonderful for those things to be in a place where people can see them, you know, and experience them and touch them because they're so rare. I'm just kind of bouncing around a little bit. Seriously said, oh shit, it looks like I'm leaving on Friday to work. Been waiting for this business 3 years, manifesting all the right conditions. Didn't take hurricanes into account. It's the season. I hope all of you on the eastern seaboard of the U.S. are okay. I was thinking about, I mean, it's this week there was a hurricane right where I was. And so I was imagining the jungle looking and feeling very different than when I was there, for sure. Yeah, Nurse Sandy said, my best friend and I are going to buy land and build houses that we can make our village and grow old and wise. Invite me. I'd like to know what that's like. Oh, the carnelian snake wandlet pendant that was part of August Living Magic Tools. Yeah, I'm trying to think. Did we or did we not incorporate that? I will not right this minute because we're kind of at the end of this class, but I will check in with Alexis and Jared, and if we didn't, then I will do something special, kind of a little party bonus for you. Yeah. Oh yeah. No, I think Love Rocks Company, second year with your sage, and you took one cutting to make a bundle, you're good. It's the 1/3 rule, right? So if your plant is this big and you just take, you know, 1/3 of it, your plant will be fine. It's when you take more than that that the plant kind of goes into shock and it's a little hard. Yeah, and Kitty was saying I still make super meals for family and friends. It's always appreciated. And when I have too much food, I love my neighbors. I just have really great neighbors, and so I'll take stuff over. I had a neighbor, I'm sure you remember, during COVID, his orange tree was just producing and producing, and they were falling all over the ground. And so I said, would you mind if I took some of your oranges? It doesn't look like you're going to eat them. And he was like, no, please take as many as you can. It's so sad to see them go to waste. And I made orange juice and brought it back. I was like, this I think you're going to use. You know, so it's sweet sometimes to do that. Like, he's like, oh my God, I never thought of making orange juice with my oranges. And of course, fresh squeezed orange juice. It doesn't taste like anything you've ever had before. It's so good. So yeah, intentional community. Lola put it beautifully. It is. It's about living in an intentional space together. And again, like, you can define kind of what that looks like and what the boundaries and roles and relationships are like. I imagine, you know, intentional communities being a place where, hey.
Sorry, I didn't know that you needed the wandlet today, so it's
No, we're not using it today.
Oh.
Yeah.
Do you wanna
I
show it
hadn't
to
I
me?
hadn't intended to use it. I was saying I will make a special bonus if I didn't weave it intentionally enough into class.
Oh.
Yeah, because it wasn't part of my plan for today, but we do need to use it and talk about it. So this is,
Yeah, the purpose.
I meant to use it for Crystalpedia, but I didn't.
Okay.
Yeah. So I will do something special with that wandlet for you as a little party bonus.
Cool.
It is beautiful. I mean, it is so beautiful.
It's one of my favorite things ever. I love I love it so much.
Well, but what I will say is it is very Kundalini, and it is very grounding. I mean, it literally, I'm holding it right now, and it feels like in a good way, like an anchor. And so I would say begin wearing it right away. For me personally, I like it long. It comes on kind of a short-ish chain, but what I would do, I don't know if we have any, don't rush if we don't to find something, but like some cord. What I would do is I would slip knot a cord through it, which will make it hang evenly. Like, you know how to slip knot through, I'll show you. And then I would wear it nice and long. But it really is, it's double terminated, so you can send and receive the energy. And it's that shimmery kind of specular hematite
So
with the garnet eyes. Like, it's just,
I think it's carnelian eyes.
or are they carnelian?
Yeah.
I don't know why I thought it was hessonite garnet.
It's got that really. I mean, it looks.
It's
like
super
garnet.
deep. Yeah, I don't know. It could be garnet. To my eye, it looks like, or it could be carnelian. To my eye, it looks like garnet, but they are absolutely beautiful. So we will come back to it. Do you want to see it on the camera? I can show you on the. Which one is the product camera? I think it's this one, isn't it?
I can't. Sorry, I can't. Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Oh, it's so pretty.
Yeah, darling. So thank you for asking about it. Sometimes we're just, moving and grooving, and
Sometimes we send.
we got to
you all
come
the
back.
fun
We send you a
things.
lot of things and get to most of them and not all of them. It doesn't happen very often. See,
Yeah.
there the eyes look kind of more bright orange.
I can tell you that the purpose for including that was because we're focusing on grounding and embodiment this month.
Yeah.
And this is kind of the ultimate tool with the hematite. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but you can't work with anything more grounding.
Sometimes
than
it's too much.
hematite. Yeah. So this is really, really going to get you in your body. So I suggest working with that whenever you need.
Yeah, don't wait. You don't wait. I mean, I will come back around and share more information about it with you. But I wouldn't wait. And I will say, if you have it, tomorrow's full moon is not about embodiment. Tomorrow's full moon is like just so much feeling. It's not about reason or being rational or it's not even really about being intentional. It's about what I love about tonight's class as it connects. Thank you, Alexis, for bringing it up. What makes sense for me in the fullness of kind of time. And it is good just to hold it too when you're feeling kind of, because the energy even today and the shadow of that full moon is overwhelming. For someone like me who has very little water in their chart, my daughter's writing it like a perfect wave, right? Because she's all Pisces and Scorpio. But I will say, it is not, this tonight's class was about imagining something in dream space, and then through that Merkaba sort of bringing it into embodiment, right? Bringing it into the realm of form and matter, out of the dimension of dream and imagination. And so I think that's kind of a cool way of thinking about this too, is it's like, tomorrow's full moon, which I'll be live with you starting at 5 p.m. Pacific time on YouTube, as per the usual. But tomorrow's full moon is a lot. Full moons in Pisces are sometimes my favorite and sometimes they're not. It's a big ass moon. It's a super moon, which means it's just really close and really big and really watery. The moon is already a watery planet, right? It's ruled by Cancer. So when you have a full blue super moon in Pisces, it's also sometimes about having to let dreams go, or having to let dreams pass through, or realizing that some dreams that you tried to pull through your Merkaba were not able to be created, right? And the one thing I know for sure is that always happens for your highest good. Like, if something is meant to be for you, there's no stopping it. You've seen that happen too, right? Where it's like some relationships, some energies, some people, some projects, like you can't stop them from happening. my kids were gonna be born. Like, they they had life forces that just needed to be on this planet in a physical form, and that was gonna happen no matter what. Some things I wanted to have happen or stay or maintain or whatever couldn't or wouldn't. And so there's a little bit of that energy. Yeah, well, we love Alexis. She really is moving forward in a beautiful way on her path. You know, it's so rare in life to be someplace for as long as she's been here. I mean, I've been here doing this for 12 years, and even that sometimes is a surprise. You know what I mean? Like, it's in our society, people have 5, 6, 7 careers before they retire. So I have felt very lucky to have Alexis with us for this time, and I'm excited to see what her next chapter looks like too. But yeah, it's for you personally, what I would think about is, where in your life do the deepest emotions sit? Is it in your relationships? Is it with your profession? Is it with your maybe it's like partner versus children, or whatever it is, and just allow that there's going to be kind of a, right, like a kind of a rush or a push through some of those things, and it's natural. There's an ebb and a flow. The other thing too is, like, my advice is, don't get too attached to your emotions right now. You know, the full moon makes everything big, even things that like aren't big or don't need to be big. Yeah, if you missed the last couple of classes or SGTV, Alexis is leaving us to move on to her next evolution, but we're really happy for her. And she was very generous, giving us lots of notice and time to prepare, and she's been here for a lot of years, so we're very grateful. I'm so glad you're here. So, any other questions for me before we sign off? I just wanted to make sure if there was anything else that you were curious about, or thoughts about tonight's class, or anything related to embodiment that you would want to share or talk about. I would love to make sure I've been able to respond to them. Yeah. Oh, well, Sarah, we missed you. I'm glad you're here. Yeah. Books on Atlantis and Lemuria. There's one book by Lucy Cavendish. I wrote about it in my Crystal Lore Legends and Myths book, but a nice deep dive if you would like. Lucy Cavendish wrote a book. Let me see if I can get the title of it for you. It's one of the better books I've read. It's called The Lost Lands, A Magical History of Lemuria, Atlantis, and Avalon. Yeah, and it's really, really good. And you can get it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and also on her website. She's in Australia. She's just a good writer. You know what I mean? So, yeah. I just have not been called to work with plant medicine. It's been a year and a half. And there's no particular reason for it. It's just, for me, some people work with ayahuasca and different kinds of plant medicine all the time. For me, the real work is the integration. What do we learn from those sessions that we need to integrate into our life? And I feel like I'm still integrating from the last time I worked with it, so that's just why I haven't done it. I see it as very hard work. Some people see it almost like recreationally, but it just isn't that for me. It's it requires a lot of homework, and so I'm still doing my homework. Do you think in seeding the new earth we are visioning it in 5D and pulling the vision into 3D timeline? I do. I really do think we are. And I think each of us is kind of holding an edge of that. You know what I mean? We all have the pieces that we manifest and create and expand and So it takes all of us to co-create whatever this next evolution is. And I think the earth still has some runway. You know what I mean? I think people have sometimes like a gloom and doom mentality. I really don't. You know, there are civilizations, I'm sure you know this, but as a historian, I can tell you that just rose and fell and disappeared from all different parts of the world. And there's all kinds of theories, like, was it famine? Was it, some kind of epidemic or pandemic? Was it warfare? I just don't, that's not what I see as our human story right now. I see us as having to come to terms with what it means that technology in and of itself and all of our advances have not made us happier. And so what really will make us happier is getting back to some of those things from our ancestors that seem so simple. And that's actually the key, I think. Like, I think in our children's and grandchildren's and nieces and great nieces and nephews' lifetimes, we'll use less technology, and we will realize it's a distraction from what really matters. Ironically. Maybe not in our lifetimes, but I think we will start to just, as with everything, I think we'll start to create better boundaries and get back to real whole foods. I never feel better. I love like processed food and all the things. I never feel better. Like today I ate a very simple, mostly plant-based diet, and I feel so good. I have lots of energy, and I can tell the difference in my skin. Like, just when we get back to like being closer to nature and closer to each other, and but it just seems so simple sometimes. Like having some veggies for lunch or an avocado for breakfast, which is what I did, or just, you know what I mean? Like, that's so simple, it's not complicated, but it's really kind of how our bodies were meant to be. And then all of a sudden you don't have a lot of the digestive problems that you have, or you sleep a little bit better, or you think a little more clearly, and it's like, maybe they were right? Our previous generations did not eat all the gluten that even though they had bread, it didn't have the same amount of gluten in it that ours does. And then we're like, why am I always bloated and tired? And it's like, so everything that we're talking about tonight is like working with sound and getting into your body and learning how to be comfortable in your body without the anxiety and without the tension and without the stress. So the note I want to leave you on for tonight, just to kind of get you thinking about it, because it helps me. And since this was our last official class on embodiment for the year, it bears repeating. When you are anxious, it is 99% of the time because you are thinking about what could happen or might happen in the future that you cannot control. No matter how much you want to believe you can control the future, you can certainly manifest and co-create, but I mean, down to the fine details, no. When you are sad, 99% of the time you are sad because you have regret, or you're reliving the past, or why did that happen, or couldn't I have done that differently. 99% of the time when you're in the present moment, not thinking about the past and not thinking about the future, you're okay. Not 100% of the time, but a good proportion of the time, right? So you have to stop and say, how's this moment right now? This moment right now is pretty darn good. I'm here with you, which is one of the great joys of my life. Like, I love being present with you and teaching. Temperature in the room's pretty good. I'm well hydrated. You know what I mean? It's beautiful outside. Like, when you really get into this, like, be in this moment situation, it's such a powerful teacher. But everything in our society is geared to either get us thinking about a future we can't control anyway, or get us stuck in the past with something that happened that we can't change. And so regret and anxiety are the two, thieves of joy. And the reality is, it doesn't really help. No matter how much you sit and focus on the past, you can't change it. And no matter how much you sit and focus on the future, you can't really influence it. So it's like being here now and trying to keep your vibration as, I always hate to say like high vibe because it's not like a fake thing. It's just trying to maintain a frequency of connection to where you are in this moment. And I think that's really important. I'm surrounded by people who live in the past, you know, surrounded by them. This happened to me. They did this, you did that. Why did this happen? You know, and I'm surrounded by people who live in the future. Well, what if, you know, what if this doesn't work out? Or what if nobody ever loves me? Or what if, you know, like whatever, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just, sometimes you just have to like put on your earmuffs because this moment is really good and it'll pass you by unless you make a commitment to being embodied. We're here to be in the body. Om Shanti Om. Coconut sugar is life. If you've never tried it, make yourself some really nice oatmeal. Don't put too much water in it so it's nice and thick. And then toast some slivered almonds in the oven at 300 degrees for 10 minutes, not too long. And just a sprinkle of coconut sugar. It's the best oatmeal you'll ever have. And really low on the glycemic index. Coconut sugar doesn't cause a spike in your insulin the way refined cane sugar does. And almonds are really nice, good source of protein. It'll keep you full for a long time. That's one of my favorite breakfasts. That or half an avocado with nothing but the bagel seasoning. The coconut sugar, if you've never tried it, is heaven on earth. You think you've tried sugar until you've tried coconut sugar. It's crunchy, it's yummy, it's natural. A little more expensive, but I use it very sparingly, and you will love it on your oatmeal. So anyway, aho. Thank you for being here tonight. It was a joy to be your hostess this evening. May the Zills bring you into present time always, and I'll see you tomorrow night for a full blue, super Pisces, dreamy moon mood situation. Thank you, Karen, for being there behind the scenes. Have a great night, you guys. We'll see you soon. Oh, yeah, my necklace. So this is the necklace. I'm going to show it to you up close. If you shop at all, no pressure, but if you do shop at sagegoddess.com, this has a double terminated quartz point inside. Let me show it to you as carefully as I can. Do you see the double term in there? That's called a manifestation point. It's not touching the outer edge, so it's not an inner child, and you can see it from all sides. But that is very rare. And it has silver hair rutile around it. It's worth about almost $1,000. It's in sterling silver. So there's no code necessary. Anything you shop for between now and midnight, one of you will win it. It's only for members of Living Magic. It's one of a kind, never seen anything like it. And I recommend the Satyaloka quartz spheres if you haven't gotten one already. And that's all I got for you.